Yo, hello, what is going on, you guys? Vicen back here with a brand new video. So today we're going to be talking about the age-old question of should you invest in vintage or modern, but taking that into today's day and age, right? So going into modern, obviously modern wasn't as highly appreciated as it is nowadays. Back then, people did not like it. Like, not in the sense they did not like it, but to invest in. People were always stay true to vintage. Modern's just going to be overprinted. No one's going to want this stuff. You're not going to make anything. You're just going to be losing money. You're going to be sitting on dead product, all of this stuff, right? Fast forward now, modern has produced some of the craziest gains in such a short time span. Like, you have Prismatic, you have Surging. Look at what 151 has done in the past year. Yeah, it's honestly crazy to believe that for an era that people were, hating so much early on, a lot of people that are investing nowadays, a lot of them focus their attention onto modern. But obviously, let's look at it from both sides. So going on to vintage, obviously vintage has been around the block. A lot of sets from vintage people are aware of. The only sets that people aren't really aware of, and most of the time, a lot of the people that I talk with don't even know half of these sets exist, is mid-era sets. So when I say mid-era, I'm talking about black and white, heart gold, platinum, a little bit of diamond and pearl. Obviously older sets, they know, obviously, the first ed Charizard or crystals, gold stars, shinings, all that stuff. People obviously know because there's a lot of huge content creators that do pack openings. Pokerev is, one of them, and he's opened a lot of vintage booster boxes and mid-era ones, kind of bringing attention to those sets. So vintage has been around the block, and the other thing vintage has going for it is not only is it scarce, but there's not many of them sold. So essentially speaking is once the last one on the market is sold and you have one, you can basically command, like you can put your own price on it. Let's say market is 50. If you're the only one with it, you could technically put it up for 60, 70, 80. And if someone really, really wants that box in their collection or to open or whatever, they'll have to pay, or maybe you guys negotiate, but, essentially, if you're firm with your price, you'll get way above market. So there's that. And then obviously when it comes to print runs, vintage compared to modern, yeah, it was not printed to the same degree. That's one thing that I will agree with. Compared to the two, modern, I guess, was quote unquote overprinted, even though the demand needs to all that print. But anyways, vintage, was not printed to the same degree as modern was. So I will give it that. And obviously, with historical value that a lot of these cards hold, as the years go by, and with there not being many boxes of certain sets from the vintage era, those prices can like exponentially climb, if I'm being honest. Like if we're looking at it from a 10, 15, 20 year, viewpoint, these boxes can climb to like some pretty absurd prices, if you really think about it. So that's one thing I will say. And then obviously you don't have to deal with any competition. Like if you put up a box, you're not going to have 10 other people try to like compete with you in price or this and that. And then here's the other thing. When you look at it from an investment, let's say you get a box, at 30,000, and 10 years down the road it goes up to 60,000. Instead of having to sell multiple booster boxes or whatever sealed product, you only have to sell one box and you get that lump sum. And for a lot of people that are selling, they understand like it like even if you have like really high demand product and stuff, it gets a little bit of a pain to like have to sell like so much of it. Like it's not that I'm saying like it's difficult or whatever. It's just kind of more tedious. And obviously, having to sell just one thing to get it like a huge lump sum, it's a lot easier. So that's another thing vintage has. And another thing that I would honestly say vintage has over modern is a lot of the whales are more focused when it comes to vintage. Because vintage just offers a lot of rarity, scarcity that a lot of these whales, obviously prefer to have in their collection. So a lot of the high rollers are, usually, floating around in that vintage area. So that's another thing. So vintage does have that money going for it, right? So coming over to modern, right? I would say honestly, I don't think there can't be any argument here. It's just facts at this point. I would honestly say modern has far more demand than what vintage does, because the huge influx of collectors that came into the hobby, they literally came around basically Sword and Shield going up. So all the sets, so a lot of the younger collectors that came in around that time, their dream sets are going to be maybe Sun and Moon, but specifically Sword and Shield going onward. So when they grow up, they're going to be more willing to throw money at those eras rather than say something from the EX era or Wizard, anything from Wizard of the Coast, like stuff like that, right? So I would honestly say that right now, modern just has far more demand than what vintage does, because you look at vintage mid-era boxes, like I get it, there's not that many, but even when there is, it's not like they sell that often. Like when you look at a team up box, right? I know there's a couple mid-era boxes that are probably around the same price, maybe a little bit higher, but those only sell like once every month or 2 months, right? Team up right now sells like almost every other day, at that high of a price, right? Because of what? Because of demand. And that's the thing is, I know I did say vintage has eyes on it, but like more people just know, like pretty much a lot of the hobby knows modern exists. Like I said, older sets, mid-era going back, a lot of people, like, speaking truthfully, they don't even know like half of these sets exist, right? Like that's the thing. You can literally tell that, like they'll probably know what gold stars and stuff are, but they probably wouldn't even know what set it came from. That's one thing. Like they probably wouldn't even know about EX Deoxys or sets like that. Maybe they might know Skyridge, obviously Skyridge, Aquapolis, stuff like that. But it's that's the thing. Like they'll know the cards, but they probably won't really know much about the set. They'll, because their attention is more focused on modern. So at the end of the day, just in my opinion, modern just has far more demand. And it could be because the price just looks more attractive compared to vintage. Maybe the hits as well, which I mean, if I'm being honest, yeah, modern does produce like some, pretty good values for like hits compared to some of the older sets. I mean, you open some of the older sets, like a good majority of older sets produce like little to no hits. The only time you make like a good return is if you grade it, and you have to get like a pretty good grade, you know. So that's the thing is, and you already know how it is. Just because you open it, you open a booster pack, you would assume that every card's going to be gem mint. No, sometimes you could get screwed, and your card's just gonna have some, just something to bring it down a grade or two, and just rob you from that gem mint grade. So that's one thing. But I will say that the multiple that some of these cards produce when you do hit that gem mint 10 for like vintage sets, yeah, it's up there. Compared to modern, it's definitely up there. But at the same time, let's be honest, like with vintage it's just a little more tricky, because with modern, people are literally eating through all the supply, right? Like so much of that supply is just, those boxes are getting deleted from the market. With vintage, a lot of whales, they want to have that product sealed because they understand just how scarce some of those boxes are, that they don't even want to open it. Even if they think, like, let's say there's a gold star ray in there or something, they still would not want to open it, because they're gonna be like, if I delete this from the market and I don't even get that pull rate, I'm screwed, because I'd probably have to spend way more than what I purchased box for, and then let alone I would have to go out of my way to find one, all this stuff, right? And then on top of that, when you have something that, like, let's just hypothetically say there's 50 booster boxes for a vintage set left in the world somehow, right? Somehow we know. And then for a modern set, there's 1,000. not even, we'll say 5,000 booster boxes, obviously you're going to want to keep the vintage box you have sealed. And as we know, yeah, with time, even if stuff isn't getting deleted at a rapid rate, stuff can go up. But let's be honest, with demand and with scarcity, it creates a really strong set that, has aggressive upticks. So, I mean, with modern, not only does it have the demand, people are literally just eating through all that supply. They're deleting all that product without realizing that this stuff isn't unlimited, So it's going to get to a point where we might have like an Evolving Skies scenario where, people just ate through so much of the product. And then now they're like, why did this box jump up so much all of a sudden? And we saw that with a lot of Sword Shield sets. So that's one thing too, is because it's at such an attractive and accessible price, people are like just dumping money to modern and deleting it, which helps it move. Going to my next point, modern, I would say, moves a lot quicker in a more attractive way. So what I mean by that is, with modern, you don't have to wait 10 years to see like a pretty decent size return. Okay, let me put it like this, right? Let's say, okay, I have some of the boxes. I know I haven't even been going through the boxes, but okay. So Skyridge on price charting apparently is at 57. One sold for 90, 33, 48. Okay, we're going to take 54. So, you know what? We'll just say 50,000, right? We'll say 50,000, right? Let's say you bought a Skyridge box for 50 grand, right? In order for you to make a 100% return, this box, you'd have to sell at 100,000, right? Now, if we look at it in a 3-year stance, do you see a box going from, say, in today's market, 160? Let's say you have to buy, instead of, obviously you can't really get modern boxes at $100 anymore. So we'll say 160. Do you see a box going from 160 to 320 in 3 years? Or a box going from 50 to 100,000 in 3 years? So that's what I'm getting at, is when you look at returns, modern just yields, like, honestly, in my opinion, the better returns out of the two. Maybe back then, if you were to get into these boxes early on, like I'm talking about when Skyridge was sub 10,000 or something, then yeah, you'd be seeing some really good returns, especially for a product that you can sell for a lump sum of money. So like, you sell your Skyridge at, I don't know, say 45,000, boom, you got 45 grand, just like that. Instead of having to sell, God knows how many booster boxes, singles, or whatever to get 45 grand sold, you just sold one product, boom, bam, done, right? But with how prices are for a lot of it, because keep in mind, in order for, honestly, I would say for a lot of vintage stuff to move up the way they did back then, we'd have to have like another Logan Paul scenario happen, honestly, because when Logan Paul, was in the hobby, doing all those box openings and stuff, it brought such a large focus to vintage, and that's the thing, I would, we're not gonna say names or whatever, but a lot of sketchy people, obviously focused their attention on vintage for the wrong reasons, and they took advantage of those prices, resealing, maybe fake stuff. So, it definitely brought a whole lot of attention. That that's why we saw an aggressive increase for a lot of vintage. But the thing that modern, doesn't do that vintage does is when markets crash, vintage hurts. Like vintage like hurts the most, right? Like modern might drop like a decent amount, but then it'll like rebound with like nothing. And then if we hit a market, right, where it drops down, vintage struggles, it does struggle, especially like I said, even though I did say like vintage produces like it has like a lot of the high rollers there, their attention there. It's just how often are they really buying this stuff? Like, yes, I said there's private deals, whatever. But it's like, let's be honest, is the Skyridge box being sold every single day? Yeah, probably not. Probably not. So that's the thing, especially when it comes to liquidating. It's hard, man. Like, okay, and I'm saying this for modern too, for a lot of new investors and stuff. If you're someone that comes into a hobby, you don't have any networking done, you don't have any social media, and let's say you have a huge box like this, it's a little difficult to sell it, especially if you're selling it at a high price, like you want like top dollar or something for it. It gets really difficult when you don't really know people. You might have to go around, maybe message some pack breakers or whatever, whoever on Instagram or, wherever, YouTube, to hopefully have them buy your stuff. But even then, they'll probably want to buy it at a discount, you know. So overall, just like gains, demand, and everything, modern as of right now, just I would say, in my opinion, is like the go-to for investing now, right? Now, hey, there could be a chance where, I don't know, 10 years from now, Skyridge could be at, 100 grand. Realistically, I'd probably see Skyridge maybe like around the 80K mark, selling consistently, maybe 80. I don't know why. I don't know. I can just see Skyridge doing that, 80, maybe higher, right? But like I said before, that's 10 years from now, right? Okay, let's say the reprint comes for Surging, you buy them at 180. Where do you think Surging Sparks would be in 10 years? You see what I mean? That's what I'm talking about, is in terms of investment, okay? I'm not saying, oh, which one's better. I'm talking about solely investing. Modern just has everything that, you don't. And the thing about modern that vintage like struggles with, okay, is keep in mind the wrapping's different. So when I buy a lot of booster boxes, even though I buy from trustworthy people, keep in mind the problem that a lot of these big buyers, big sellers deal with, because keep in mind, just because you buy from a trusted person doesn't mean that what they're selling is legit, because chances are they'd have to buy it off someone else, and maybe it could have been a resale, whatever, that looked realistic, that fooled them, whatever, tricked them, and now you're the one left holding the bag, unless the company or whatever understands, or the seller, they understand, like, oh, that was my fault, this and that. And with vintage, like, the wrapping, like, it's just so easy to reseal vintage, right? And then with fakes especially, they're pretty good fakes, right? There's pretty good fakes for vintage, but for modern, there's just so, like, you are more likely to run across a reseal than a fake box, right? When it comes to modern, you are more likely to, and even then, when it comes to a resealed box for vintage and modern, it's very easy to tell for a modern compared to a vintage box, right? Because, hey, I mean, even PokeRev has been fooled. With if I'm not mistaken, the Neo Discovery, I think that was either what, resealed or fake. It was one of the two. I think it was a good fake. I don't know, something like that. But that's the thing, for like the amount of money you'd be pouring onto that box. It's like, put it like this: would you rather lose 50K because of a fake or a resealed box, or would you rather lose, say, we'll do a high end, we'll do like a mid end, we'll say 300. Would you rather lose $300 from a fake or resealed? Obviously, you're gonna pick the 300. 300 is not gonna hurt anywhere near to the degree a 50K is gonna hurt. So for new investors, especially, you don't have to go through all the niches, find people or understand it. Like, with vintage, it's a lot more research, and it's a lot more time heavy too. It's a lot more time heavy because a lot of these boxes have ran up so aggressively that now they've just been kind of like, yeah, they'll sell good, but it's not like every year they're going up like 10, 20,000, right? Who knows? Like I said, who knows? Maybe 10 years from now, Skyridge could be above 100. Who knows? And you could end up doubling your money. But that's what I'm saying, in 10 years. So that's why I said, in a realistic, viewpoint. Do you see Skyridge going from this to double, or a 160 box to double, or more than double? We've seen it, what Sword of Shield does. Scarlet and Violet, honestly, now that I'm looking at, at it as a whole, it's a very stacked era. That's all I'll say. So, and obviously, when it comes to positions or really just starting up, you don't need a whole lot of money with modern. With vintage, man, you literally have to have at the minimum 5 figures to be buying these vintage boxes. Hey, you could get some for under 10 grand, but I mean, there's like a few vintage. If I'm not mistaken, like the uh, Team Rocket booster box, not the first edition, the regular one, I think is like what, like 8,500 or 9,000? Okay, it actually might be a 10 now. I don't know. But you could buy a couple mid-era boxes, hey, those are moving up. I remember one box I saw on eBay. It was up for 2,500 was Heart Gold to Silver Triumphant. Now that same box is up for like 4 grand or something. But that was literally like I would say that was probably like 2.5 years ago or something. So I think it was around the time I was buying a lot of like Sword and Shield stuff. So when we really look at it now, I mean, I still came out ahead with Sword and Shield, but hey, I mean, it still moved up. But that's the thing, is you need to have like already like a pretty good amount of money to be, to be putting into the hobby for vintage. With modern, you don't need to have 10,000. Okay, obviously if you want to have like, the more money you throw into the hobby, the more you'll be able to get back if you're making smart choices. That's one thing I cannot emphasize enough. If you're making smart choices, don't just throw money at stupid themes decks or just random ass products because it has Pokemon in it and expect a 300% return. No, because you need to understand that there's products that will perform far better, in the long run than compared to other stuff, right? But like I said, at the end of the day, with modern, you don't need that much. You literally use, like, you can literally put aside a couple hundred every month, buy yourself a booster box or two, right? Now, let's say you put aside a couple hundred, yeah, you can't buy a booster box, maybe a booster pack, but the thing, like I said, with vintage, then you have to deal with either weighed or unweighed packs and reseal. Like, vintage is just so like for me personally, all that stuff is just like a turn off for me. Like, having to deal with all that, it's just such a hassle. When you buy something, you have to sit there, look at it, and be like, because there's been a lot of stories where people buy a box, they have it in their collection for years, and it turned out to be fake or resealed, right? So that's why, like, me personally, investment wise, because keep in mind, when investment, you plan on selling it in the near future. You don't want to be where you sell it and it turned out to be fake and you got screwed over, So that's one huge turnoff for me with vintage. Obviously, then there's the returns, obviously the entry point for prices. Overall, right now, you're far better off just investing into modern. Now, collection wise, yes, a lot of this vintage stuff you do want to have in your collection because, hey, it will go up in price. Who knows by how much, and that's the thing. If you don't plan on selling, you want to have it in your collection, then hey, now could be the time to be buying up some modern, or not modern, vintage boxes, vintage cards, whatever, or who knows, maybe when the bear market comes, we could see the prices drop. But yeah, from a collector standpoint, yeah, you definitely, want to be on the lookout for vintage. Once you see like, okay, now is a good time to buy it. But investment wise, yeah, modern, because so between the singles, that's one thing vintage has when you're looking at it from a collector standpoint. That stuff don't drop. Modern kind of like, with singles especially, they'll come out hot and then they'll kind of dip down. With vintage, yeah, that stuff ain't like dipping down unless it like for some reason goes up 1,000%. Then of course it'll probably dip down, But with modern, it's just natural. Like, it happens all the time where it comes out hot, comes down, goes down a little, stagnates, goes up, blah blah, and it's just kind of, you know, obviously performing a lot better than mid-era, some vintage sets and stuff, but it's obviously like a better call to be buying vintage singles. Like let's say there's a hit, right? Like, let's say a new set comes out. Oh, okay, prismatic, right? You obviously you want the Umbreon. Do you want to buy it out the gate? for like, what is it right now, like selling for like 1,700 or something? Or would you rather just buy like a vintage card and, obviously not have to worry about it, dropping down like a huge like percent, you know? But hey, like I said, if you're looking in from a collector standpoint, buy what you want to collect, what you want to have in your own collection. That's all I'm gonna say. But investment wise, modern, modern. And I know you could say I'm being biased, but like honestly, that's just how I see it. Because I buy a lot of modern boxes and I always check for everything. But it's easier with like in all the years I've purchased modern stuff, I've maybe once I've come across a fake box. And I told them, I was like, hey, this isn't authentic. The lettering here isn't right. The wrapping is kind of off. This lettering isn't censored to like this point. It's off by like a couple centimeters, all this stuff, right? Like when it comes to authenticating, when I'm buying stuff, I will be on top of it, right? But it's very easy. But with vintage, like you literally have like people that have been in the hobby for years that, have experience with vintage stuff, even they get fooled. And that's why like that's a huge turnoff. And it's something that like, like I said, if you're buying as an investment, you don't want to buy something, sell it later down the road just for you to find out it's fake, And let's say you do sell something that's fake, they find out it's fake, it's either you give them your money back or your reputation's done, So with the high entry point too, it's just modern's better. In today's day and age, especially for a lot of new investors or people that just don't have a lot of capital to work with, modern's just better. Even if you're someone that has a pretty like good amount of income where you can just throw out the hobby, if you want good returns, in like 5 years, you're looking at it from like a 5-year viewpoint, modern. Over the years I've been in here, modern has just produced like so many good percentages, and it always like that's one thing I will say, it's always beaten my expectations. Like I literally thought that Lost Origin would reach like 350 like by the end of this year, but it literally did that like a month ago. So it literally like blew that expectation out the water by a year. Evolving Skies, I literally was like, I could see it hitting 1,000 by the end of the year. It's almost at 1,400. I literally thought that Evolving would be like at 14, 15, close to 15 by the end of this year. No, like I said, same thing, beat it by a year. So I'm gonna say if you're someone that, I wouldn't say has paper hands, but you're someone that just, you're looking at it like the way that I do. You're looking at it for, 4 to 6 years. That's the time frame I always look at things. So we'll say 5 years. You're someone that's like, okay, I'm looking to sell in 5 years, or I'm looking to just sell. Because here's the thing: if you're someone that's short term, let's say like you buy something in the short term, hey, there's a good possibility that some of these vintage boxes could definitely go up with a couple thousand in the short term. Especially if you're someone that let's say something happens early on and you have to sell it. Obviously, you're going to want to get your money back, if not more. With modern, like it's like newer stuff, like newer releases. Yes, prices are going to range. Sometimes they'll go up, come down, but after they're out of print, usually they'll be up like a pretty good amount. So overall, that's just how I'm looking at it. That's just my opinion. Other people could have their own opinion, but for me personally, modern for me. And I know I had like all these boxes up, but I mean, just we'll just do like a quick skim through. I mean, just look at Surging in a couple months, doubled. Future Strike, same thing. I mean, literally in a year went from 160 to 452. Temporal Forces, even this was going. I'm pretty sure, yeah, I was in like the low hundreds. Literally, this is already hitting like close to 170. In just a few months. Evolving Skies, I don't even have to mention Evolving Skies. Same thing as like Team Up, just completely skyrocketing. Cosmic Eclipse, same thing. This is also going up. And keep in mind, all these sets, like they all have demand, but that's the thing is you can liquidate this stuff a lot quicker than vintage, in my opinion. And these are like also good for like people that don't really have connections or don't have any social media. You might throw it up on Facebook or whatever, or online. You know, you could sell it no problem. And now if you were to throw like, you know, so going into, I would say mid-era vintage, you know, Flashfire, Call Legends, Sky Ridge, Secret Wonders, Plasma Storm, you know, Undaunted. If you were to throw these boxes up, yeah, it's gonna take some time. And if you're someone that's like, let's say you've been holding it for a couple years and you're like, I'm ready to sell, like I need to like make this move. Let's say you're, I don't know, buying a house or buying something, right? Or you're looking to put money into, I don't know, crypto. I don't know, you know, you just need the money. Yeah, that's where modern comes in clutch because you can sell it a lot quicker than say some of these boxes, unless you literally sell them at like a low percent. Where at that point, you know, maybe you're still up a good amount, or maybe you might break. Who knows? We don't know because, that, like I said, when it comes to finding deals on some of these boxes, it's not that easy. With modern, it's pretty easy to find deals, but with some of these boxes, it's not that easy. I mean, Flashfire, this thing's like what? It's like in the 3 to 4 thousand or something. I think above 4. There's been sales above 4, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 44. I'm pretty sure there was 40. Yeah, so you know you have prices. Call Legends. Yeah, I don't know why the market's 4,700, but there was one that sold for 14 grand. Oh, that's German. That probably excused it a little. But yeah, 14,000, and I think like the cheapest I saw was like online that was like 26,000 or something. So Call of Legends, definitely one of my favorite sets of all time. You know, in the near future, definitely a box I want to have. But like I said, it's something that doesn't come across that often in the market, so it's really hard to dictate like what the value is, you know, or what a good price is on it. You know, Skyridge, weird, you know, Skyridge, same thing. I mean, one sold for this was around the Logan Paul era, 90,000, and then it just completely dropped down, and now it kind of averaged out in the mid 50,000s. Secret Wonders, I mean, okay, it's 20,000. I'm not sure where that came from, and then it's just 4 or 5. So, and that's the thing. If you look at the sales dates, I mean, obviously there could be a couple from last year, but I mean, it doesn't sell that often. You know, same thing. I would say Plasma Storm is one of the sets that has the highest demand in black and white. And I'm pretty sure it's the highest valued booster box from black and white, if I'm not mistaken. But even this is literally not like super old, and even this kind of like takes a little bit of a while to sell. I mean, yeah, I mean, we have like 2 sales here, another 2. Okay, so like an average, and then you go like 4 months. Okay, so probably like once a month it sells. You know, so but that's what I'm saying is when you look at the prices too, they're kind of like all scattered too. And then obviously getting into Undaunted, okay, yeah, that's crazy. 10,000, 8,500. That's actually crazy. But yeah, same thing here. Prices are just all over the place. You know, it's really hard to tell what's a snipe, what isn't, and then you're just waiting. You know, you're gonna be waiting a decent while to sell it. You know, especially if you just throw it up on eBay. So, in my opinion, to end it off with, modern, in my opinion, is just the better investment in today's day and age. Who knows? Maybe vintage can make a comeback and end up, you know, beating everyone's expectations, and you know somehow some of those boxes triple in price in the next few years. We don't know, but I like to go off of history, graph, statistics, and modern has just been, you know, proving that time and time again. So if you're a new collector, you're someone that doesn't have that much money, or you're someone that wants to like have good gains, but you don't want to have to be waiting, you know, 10, 15 years, modern's the way to go. You know, personally, I've been doing this for years. Modern has not let me down, you know, but you have to understand this also goes for vintage too. When you hit bear markets, no one's safe. Nothing's safe. Everything falls. It depends how much it falls. You know, vintage, you know, now for vintage, because you know we didn't see any like aggressive upticks or whatever. In a bear market, vintage might drop down a little, but I would feel maybe stagnant, maybe go up. Who knows? Modern's usually the one that like during a bear market it will drop. So that's all I'll say. But overall, at the end of the day, I'm always gonna go investment wise, modern over vintage. It's my opinion. You know, everyone has their own, but that's just how I see it. But anyways, if you guys did enjoy today's video, feel free to drop a like, comment, and a sub. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. And with that, Bison out.